Part 4. Emma grabbed Sarah's phone and started recording as Karen raised the bolt cutters to their fence. In the harsh glow of the motion sensor lights that had just clicked on, Karen looked deranged, her perfect hair disheveled, her tennis outfit wrinkled, her face twisted with rage. "This ends tonight," Karen screamed, cutting through the chain link. "I'm tired of being patient with you people." Sarah remained calm, whispering to Emma, "Keep recording, get everything." Karen squeezed through the hole she'd created and stomped toward Sarah's half-demolished pool, bolt cutters still in hand. "You think you can ignore me? You think you can destroy this neighborhood and get away with it? Karen, you're trespassing," Sarah called out through the open kitchen window, "and committing destruction of property. You need to leave immediately." "I'll leave when you fill in this eyesore and start acting like a responsible neighbor." Karen raised the bolt cutters above her head and brought them down hard on Sarah's wheelbarrow, denting the metal with a loud crash. Then she turned toward the garden hose coiled near the house. "Karen, stop!" Sarah yelled. "The police are already on their way." It was a bluff, but it worked. Karen spun around, bolt cutters still raised, her face manic in the security lighting. "You called the cops on me. Me. I'm the one trying to protect this neighborhood from people like you." "Mom," Emma whispered, "should I actually call 911? "Not yet. Let her keep talking." Karen was ranting now, pacing back and forth in their yard like a caged animal. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my property value? Do you know how hard I've worked to make this street respectable?" She swung the bolt cutters at Sarah's garden shed, leaving a deep gouge in the wooden door. "And your daughter, running around unsupervised while you have your little breakdown with power tools. Someone needs to protect that girl from your selfishness." "Now call," Sarah told Emma quietly. As Emma dialed 911, Karen continued her destruction. She knocked over plant pots, scattered garden tools, and took another swing at the wheelbarrow. But it was her words that were doing the real damage to herself. "I've been documenting everything, every noise, violation, every sign of instability. I know people at the school district, people at social services. One phone call from me and that girl gets placed somewhere safe." Emma spoke quietly into the phone, giving their address and describing the situation to the dispatcher. "Yes, she's destroying property and making threats. No, we're inside the house. ... Yes, she has a weapon, bolt cutters. ... Karen had moved to Sarah's tool shed and was systematically destroying everything she could reach. "You want to play games with me? I'll show you games. I've got photos of you drinking wine in your backyard. I've got recordings of you yelling. I know people who will swear you're an unfit mother." Sarah felt her anger spike. "What recordings?" Karen laughed, a sound devoid of sanity. "You think I haven't been listening? My bedroom window faces your kitchen. I've heard every phone call, every conversation. You think you're so smart with your lawyer and your documentation? I've been building a case against you for months." "She's been spying on us," Emma whispered, her face pale. Through the window, they watched Karen pull out her phone and start taking pictures of the mess she'd just created. "This is what your mother's project really looks like," she called out. "Destruction, chaos. This is what Child Protective Services needs to see." Sarah realized with horrifying clarity what Karen was doing. She was creating evidence, a mess that she had made and would claim was Sarah's doing. "She's going to frame us," Sarah said. But Karen had made one crucial mistake. In her manic state, she'd forgotten about the security cameras. Sarah had installed a simple home security system after the divorce, nothing fancy, but good enough to monitor the backyard and driveway. Every moment of Karen's rampage was being recorded in high definition, with timestamps and audio. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Karen heard them too. Her head snapped up, and for the first time that night, she looked uncertain. "They're coming for you," she called out to Sarah. "When they see this mess, when I tell them what kind of person you really are, Karen." Sarah's voice cut through the night air like a blade. "Look up." Karen followed Sarah's pointing finger to the small security camera mounted under the eaves of the house, its red recording light blinking steadily. The color drained from Karen's face. "That camera has been recording everything for the past 15 minutes, Sarah continued. "Your breaking and entering, your destruction of my property, your threats against my daughter, your admission that you've been illegally surveilling our private conversations." Karen stared at the camera in horror, then at the bolt cutters in her hands, then at the destruction scattered around her. I was protecting the neighborhood. ... You were committing multiple felonies." Two police cars pulled into Sarah's driveway, their red and blue lights painting the entire yard in alternating colors. Officer Martinez emerged from the first car, along with a younger female officer Sarah didn't recognize. "Mrs. Mitchell, we got a call about a disturbance." "Officer Martinez. Thank goodness, that's Karen Pemberton, in my backyard. She cut through my fence, trespassed on my property, and has been destroying my belongings with those bolt cutters." Karen dropped the bolt cutters like they were on fire. "Officers, I can explain, ma'am. Step away from the tools and put your hands where I can see them," the female officer ordered. As Karen complied, Officer Martinez surveyed the damage. The cut fence, the destroyed garden equipment, the scattered tools, and Karen standing in the middle of it all, painted a pretty clear picture. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us, Officer Martinez said to Karen. Wait, you don't understand. She's the problem. Karen pointed frantically at Sarah's house. She's been making noise all hours, destroying property, endangering her child. I was just trying to document, ma'am. You cut through a fence and entered someone else's property without permission. You destroyed their belongings. Right now, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and criminal trespass. As the younger officer began reading Karen her rights, Karen's composure finally cracked completely. This isn't fair. I'm trying to protect this neighborhood. She's the criminal. She's unstable. Check with Child Protective Services. I filed the report. Officer Martinez glanced at Sarah. Mrs. Mitchell, would you like to press charges? Sarah looked at Karen, handcuffed, disheveled, still ranting about neighborhood protection and property values, and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Yes, officer. I'd like to press full charges. As they loaded Karen into the back of the patrol car, she pressed her face against the window and screamed, "This isn't over. I know people. I have connections. You can't do this to me." The police cars pulled away, taking Karen and her threats with them. The neighborhood fell quiet except for the gentle hum of cicadas and the distant sound of a dog barking. Sarah and Emma stood in their kitchen, looking out at the backyard that now looked like a crime scene. Is it really over? Emma asked. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Margaret Hendricks. Saw the news alert about an arrest on your street. Call me first thing tomorrow. We have everything we need now. Another text, this one from Officer Martinez. Mrs. Mitchell, we'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. Bring any additional evidence you have. This will likely result in multiple felony charges. And then, surprisingly, a text from David. Emma told me what happened. I owe you an apology. I was wrong about Karen, and I was wrong to doubt your judgment. I'm sorry. Sarah showed the messages to Emma, who grinned for the first time in days. So what happens now? Sarah looked out at her half-demolished pool, at the cut fence that would need repair, at the scattered garden tools that would need to be collected, but she also looked at her daughter safe, proud, and finally understanding that sometimes the right thing to do was fight back. Now we finish the pool removal, on our timeline, for our reasons, and we live our lives without looking over our shoulders. And Mrs. Pemberton, Sarah's smile was grim but satisfied. Mrs. Pemberton is about to learn that there are consequences for people who think they can terrorize their neighbors into submission. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in her transformed backyard, admiring the raised garden beds where her pool used to be. Emma was planting tomatoes, her hands dirty and her face content. The local newspaper had run a story about Karen's arrest. Local woman, charged with multiple felonies in neighbor harassment case. It mentioned the extortion texts, the false CP report, the illegal surveillance, and the final night of destruction that had led to her downfall. Karen had hired an expensive lawyer, but the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the documented harassment, the text messages, it all painted a picture of a woman who had systematically targeted her neighbors and escalated to criminal behavior when her control tactics failed. She was facing 5 felony charges and had already been served with a restraining order that prohibited her from any contact with Sarah or Emma. Mom, Emma called from the garden. Mrs. Chen next door wants to know if we need help with the tomato steaks. Sarah smiled. Mrs. Chen was the neighbor on the other side, a quiet retired teacher who had watched the Karen situation unfold with sympathetic concern. In the weeks since Karen's arrest, other neighbors had the pounding on Marcus's door at 2:47 a.m. wasn't just loud, it was the sound of his life about to shatter. Through the peephole, he saw Karen from 4B standing behind 2 police officers, her face twisted in manufactured terror. That's him, she whispered, pointing directly at Marcus. He's the one who broke into my apartment. What the officers didn't know, what Karen was banking on them never discovering, was that the washing machine humming in her kitchen still had Marcus's wet clothes spinning inside it. The fluorescent lights in Pinewood Apartments' basement laundry room flickered like dying fireflies as Marcus Chen loaded his last quarter into the ancient washing machine. The familiar chunk whir of the mechanism, swallowing his money, felt like a small victory after the day he'd had 12 hours of double shifts at the diner. Karen from 4B screaming at the mailman about her packages, and now finally, clean clothes for tomorrow's job interview. He'd been saving for months for that interview suit hanging in his closet upstairs, the one that represented everything he was working toward. A real job, a way out of this crumbling building, maybe even enough money to help his sister with her medical bills. The washing machine's rhythmic churning was almost meditative as he settled into the plastic chair he'd dragged down from the alley, pulling out his worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo to pass the 45 minutes. The basement was his sanctuary. Most tenants avoided it, the flickering lights, the perpetual dampness, the way sounds echoed off the concrete walls like whispers from the grave. But Marcus found peace here. No Karen banging on his ceiling at midnight because his footsteps were too heavy. No Mrs. Patterson from 2A asking when he was going to upgrade his living situation. No landlord Hendricks with his monthly threats about late rent. He was halfway through chapter 12 when the building's power died. The washing machine's gentle hum cut to silence so sudden, it felt violent. The fluorescent lights went dark, leaving only the weak amber glow from the emergency exit sign. Marcus sat in the darkness, book useless in his hands, listening to water slosh inside the machine as it slowly stopped spinning. Perfect, he muttered, feeling around for his phone's flashlight. The building's electrical system was older than disco and twice as unreliable. Power outages were as common as Karen's complaints, usually lasting anywhere from 20 minutes to 3 hours. He'd wait it out. He had to. Those were his work clothes in their 2 uniforms, socks, underwear, everything he needed for the rest of the week. The suit was upstairs, safe, but without these basics. He'd be wearing dirty clothes to tomorrow's interview, and that wasn't happening. Not after everything he'd sacrificed to get this chance. 20 minutes turned into 40. 40 became an hour. The basement grew cold, and Marcus's phone battery was dying. He'd already texted Hendricks twice about the power, getting no response. Typical. At 11:47 p.m., the lights suddenly blazed back to life. Marcus blinked against the harsh fluorescence, his eyes adjusting as the washing machine coughed back to life, resuming its cycle exactly where it had left off. He checked his phone still had enough time to finish the wash and get the clothes into the dryer before midnight. But when he opened the washing machine 15 minutes later, it was empty. Not just empty, pristine, clean, as if it had never held his clothes at all. Marcus stared into the steel drum, his reflection warped and multiplied in its surface. He checked the other machines. Nothing. Looked behind them, under them, in every corner of the basement. His clothes had vanished. What the hell? He ran upstairs, taking the steps 3 at a time, scenarios racing through his mind. Maybe someone had moved his clothes during the power outage. Maybe there was some kind of mix-up. Maybe the sound of a washing machine running came from the 4th floor. Marcus slowed as he climbed the last flight of stairs, following the sound. It was coming from apartment 4B. Karen's apartment? He pressed his ear to her door, and there it was, the unmistakable rhythm of a washing machine in its spin cycle. Karen had been complaining for months about not having a washing machine. She'd filed formal complaints with Hendricks, started a petition among the tenants, even called the city housing authority. It's unconscionable, she'd declared during last month's tenant meeting, that in this day and age, we should have to trudge down to that dungeon of a basement to do our laundry like medieval peasants. But now she had one running in her apartment. Marcus knocked on her door, softly at first, then more insistently. Karen, it's Marcus from 3B. I think there might have been a mix-up with the laundry. No answer. But the washing machine kept running. He knocked again, harder. Karen, I know you're home. I can hear your TV. The volume on her television suddenly increased. Some late-night infomercial about kitchen knives began blaring through the door. Karen. Marcus pounded on the door now, his voice rising. My clothes were in the basement machine. Where are they? The washing machine stopped. In the sudden silence, Marcus could hear Karen moving around inside her apartment, footsteps careful and deliberate. He waited, counting his heartbeats, feeling sweat break out across his forehead despite the building's perpetual chill. The door opened 6 inches, held by the security chain. Karen's pale eye appeared in the gap, surrounded by the deep lines that made her look older than her 53 years. She was wearing a pink bathrobe and an expression of wounded innocence that Marcus had seen her deplore against everyone from delivery drivers to other tenants. Do you know what time it is? She asked, her voice carrying that particular tone of someone who considered themselves perpetually wronged by the universe. It's almost midnight. Karen, someone took my clothes from the washing machine downstairs. I heard your machine running. I don't know what you're talking about. She started to close the door. Marcus put his hand against it, not pushing, just stopping it from shutting. Karen, please. Those are my work clothes. I have an interview tomorrow. Just tell me if you've seen them. Take your hand off my door. Take your hand off my door right now, or I'm calling the police. The threat hit Marcus like cold water. He jerked his hand back as if the door had burned him. In this building, in this neighborhood, with his face and her word, calling the police wasn't just a threat, it was a nuclear option. I'm not trying to cause trouble, he said, forcing his voice to stay calm. I just need my clothes back. I don't have your clothes, and I don't appreciate being harassed at midnight by someone I barely know. Karen's eye narrowed in the gap. Maybe you should be more careful with your belongings, instead of accusing innocent people. Then why do I hear a washing machine in your apartment? I don't know what you think you hear, but you need to leave my door alone before I file a complaint with Mr. Hendricks. The door slammed shut. Marcus stood in the hallway, staring at the peeling paint on Karen's door, listening to the faint sound of her television. No washing machine now. Nothing but the infomercial's promises of lifetime warranties and limited time offers. He pulled out his phone and called Hendricks' voicemail. He tried texting again, explaining the situation, asking if there were security cameras in the basement. No response. Back in his own apartment, Marcus sat on his second-hand couch and tried to think rationally. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe someone else had taken the clothes. Maybe there was an explanation that didn't involve Karen lying to his face. But he'd heard that washing machine. He was sure of it. Unable to sleep, he dressed in his interview suit, his only clean clothes, and went back down to the basement at 6 a.m., hoping against hope that his clothes had somehow reappeared. The laundry room was empty, silent, exactly as he'd left it. He was walking back upstairs when he heard voices from the first floor. Hendricks was there, talking to someone near the mailboxes. Marcus hurried down to catch him. "Mr. Hendricks, I've been trying to reach you about." Hendricks held up a hand. He was a thin man in his 60s with the permanent squint of someone who suspected everyone of trying to cheat him. "I know. Got your messages. Real sorry about your laundry situation, Marcus, but I can't be expected to solve every little mix-up between tenants. It's not a mix-up. Someone took now. I don't want to get involved in he said she said situations." Hendricks glanced toward the stairs, and Marcus followed his gaze to see Karen descending, dressed in a conservative navy blue outfit that looked suspiciously familiar. Marcus's blood turned to ice water. She was wearing his shirt, his navy blue dress shirt that he'd been saving for special occasions. The one he'd put in the wash specifically because he wanted it fresh for today's interview. The shirt he'd bought at Goodwill but had tailored to fit properly, a small luxury he'd allowed himself. "Good morning, Mr. Hendricks," Karen said sweetly. "I hope you got my message about the disturbance last night." "What disturbance?" Marcus demanded. Karen looked at him with practiced concern. "This gentleman was pounding on my door after midnight, demanding to be let into my apartment. He seemed quite agitated." "That's not she has my shirt on." Hendricks looked between them, his expression that of a man who wanted nothing more than to be somewhere else. "Folks, I really don't have time for this. Karen, if you feel threatened, maybe you should talk to the police. Marcus, if you're missing property, that's also a police matter. But I can't referee dispute it." Marcus spent the morning pacing his apartment like a caged animal, the torn shirt evidence burning in his mind like a beacon of hope. He'd missed the job interview. There was no way he could show up in a wrinkled suit claiming his clothes had been stolen. The receptionist's polite "perhaps we can reschedule" had the hollow ring of a door closing forever. But he had proof now. The tier, the fit, the timing, it was all there. He just needed to document it properly, build a case that even Hendricks couldn't ignore, maybe even get the police involved if necessary. At 2 p.m., he positioned himself across the street from Pinewood Apartments with his phone ready, waiting for Karen to return. The October air was sharp with the promise of winter, and Marcus pulled his thin jacket tighter as he watched the building's entrance. His breath came out in small puffs of vapor, each exhale marking another moment of his life spent in Karen's orbit. She appeared at 2:47, walking with the self-satisfied gait of someone who'd spent the day wearing stolen victories. Marcus's shirt looked even more obviously masculine on her. In daylight the shoulder seams hung wrong, the chest area bunched awkwardly where she'd tried to adjust it with a belt. She was carrying shopping bags from Nordstrom and Macy's. More money in those bags than Marcus made in a month. He started recording as she approached the building, zooming in on the shirt, capturing the distinctive tear, the way the fabric pulled across her shoulders. This was it. Undeniable proof. "Excuse me, Kieran," he called, jogging across the street. She turned, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. Marcus saw irritation flash across her features before the wounded innocence returned. "Oh, Marcus, I thought you had a job interview today." "I did, but someone stole my clothes, so I couldn't go." He held up his phone, still recording. "That's my shirt you're wearing, the one with the tear by the pocket." Karen looked down at the shirt as if seeing it for the first time. "This old thing, I've had it for years." "No, you haven't. I can prove it. That tear happened last week when I caught it on a nail at work. The shirt is tailored for a man's body. Look how it fits you. I don't know what you're implying, but I don't appreciate being filmed without my consent." Karen's voice carried the particular authority of someone accustomed to making other people's problems disappear through sheer indignation. "This is harassment. This is evidence." "Evidence of what?" "That I own a shirt you think looks like yours." Karen stepped closer, and Marcus caught that familiar scent of his detergent again. "Marcus, I'm going to say this once, clearly, so there's no misunderstanding. I don't have your clothes. I've never taken anything that belongs to you. What I have is a disturbed neighbor who seems to think he can film me on public property and make wild accusations. Then explain the washing machine I heard in your apartment last night." "What washing machine?" "I don't have a washing machine." The lie was so brazen, so confident, that for a moment Marcus wondered if he was losing his mind. But no, he'd heard it. He was sure. "Let me into your apartment," he said. "Right now. If there's no washing machine, if these aren't my clothes, then you have nothing to hide." Karen's laugh was like breaking glass. "Let you into my apartment? A man who's been stalking me, filming me, making threats? Absolutely not. I'm not making threats. I'm asking for what's mine." "What's yours?" Karen's voice rose, and Marcus realized they were drawing attention. Other pedestrians were slowing down, watching. "What's yours is whatever fantasy you've constructed in your head. What's mine is my peace of mind, which you're destroying." She pulled out her own phone. "I'm calling the police." "Good," Marcus said, though his heart was racing. "Call them. Let them see the evidence." 911. "Yes, I need help. I'm being harassed by my neighbor. He's following me. filming me without permission, making accusations. Yes. I feel threatened. No. This has been going on since last night when he tried to force his way into my apartment. Marcus stared at her, watching her perform. Because that's what it was, a performance. Every word calculated, every pause perfectly timed. She was painting him as the aggressor, the dangerous one, while she stood there wearing his stolen shirt like a costume. Ma'am, what's your location? Karen provided the address, then looked directly at Marcus while she continued. He's about 6 feet tall, black male, mid-20s. He's agitated and he's been drinking. I can smell alcohol on him. I haven't been drinking, Marcus protested, but Karen wasn't listening. Yes, I'll stay on the line. Please hurry. She ended the call and smiled at Marcus with mock sympathy. They'll be here in 5 minutes. I suggest you think very carefully about what you want to say to them. Marcus felt the walls closing in. He knew exactly how this would play out. Young black man accused of harassment by middle-aged white woman, his word against hers, his agitation against her tears. The recording on his phone would mean nothing if they arrested him first and asked questions later. Karen, please. Just tell me why. What did I ever do to you? For a moment, something shifted in her expression. The mask didn't drop entirely, but it cracked enough for him to see something cold and calculating underneath. You exist, she said quietly. You exist in my space, making noise, bringing down the property values, making me explain to my friends why I have to live in a building with people like you. The honesty of it hit Marcus like a physical blow, not the racism he'd dealt with, that his whole life, but the casual cruelty of it, the way she said it like she was commenting on the weather. So you stole my clothes. You sabotaged my job interview. You're calling the police on me, because I exist. I'm calling the police because you're harassing me. Everything else is just your paranoid imagination. The sirens were audible now, growing closer. Marcus had maybe 2 minutes before they arrived, 2 minutes to make a decision that would define the rest of his life. He could run and look guilty. He could stay and trust that the truth would matter. He stayed. 2 patrol cars pulled up to the curb, and 4 officers got out. Marcus recognized the type: immediately suburban cops who saw the city as a war zone and everyone in it as a potential enemy. Their hands didn't move to their weapons, but they didn't move away from them either. Ma'am, you called about harassment. The lead officer was tall and pale, with the kind of mustache that suggested he took himself very seriously. Yes? Thank you for coming so quickly. Karen's voice had transformed again, becoming smaller, more vulnerable. She was a different person, entirely a frightened victim instead of a calculated predator. This is my neighbor, Marcus. He's been bothering me since last night. Sir, can I see some identification? Marcus slowly reached for his wallet, hyper-aware of every movement. Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. This woman is wearing my shirt. She stole my clothes from the laundry room, he's been saying. That all morning, Karen interjected. He filmed me without permission, followed me, demanded to come into my apartment. I'm afraid he might be having some kind of breakdown. The officer studied Marcus's ID. Marcus Chen, 2847 Pinewood Avenue, apartment 3B. Is that correct? Yes, sir. And ma'am, you live in the same building. Apartment for B, right above him. Karen pulled her cardigan tighter, and Marcus realized she was now completely covering the shirt. He's been making my life miserable. Sir, what's your side of the story? Marcus explained everything. The power outage, the missing clothes, the washing machine sounds. Karen wearing his shirt. He showed them the recording on his phone, pointed out the tear in the fabric, tried to explain about the masculine tailoring. The officers watched the video with expressions that suggested they were humoring him. When he finished, the lead officer handed back his phone. Sir, I don't see any evidence of theft in this video. What I see is you confronting this woman on a public street, filming her without consent, and making accusations you can't prove. But look at how the shirt fits her, sir. Step back from the lady, please. Marcus realized he'd moved closer to Karen during his explanation, driven by frustration and desperation. Now he was standing too close, and in the officer's eyes, he could see himself as they saw him, an agitated black man, looming over a frightened white woman. He stepped back, hands raised. I'm not threatening anyone. I just want my property back, ma'am. Do you want to press charges for harassment? Marcus's world stopped. Everything he'd worked for, every plan he'd made, every dream he'd nursed, it all balanced on Karen's next words. She looked at him for a long moment, her head tilted slightly as if she were considering a difficult decision. Then she sighed, the sound of someone reluctantly choosing mercy over justice. No, officer, I think Marcus is just confused. Maybe stressed about money or work or something. I don't want to ruin his life over a misunderstanding. The relief that flooded through Marcus was so intense he nearly collapsed. But even as he felt grateful, some part of his mind recognized what Karen had just done. She'd positioned herself as the magnanimous victim, the woman with the power to destroy him, who chose not to use it. She'd made it clear that his freedom existed at her discretion. However, Karen continued, I would appreciate it if there could be some kind of official record. You know, in case this escalates? We can file an incident report, the officer said. No charges, but it'll be on record that we responded to a harassment complaint. Marcus wanted to object. Marcus spent the next 3 days becoming a student of Karen's routines. He learned that she left for work at exactly 8:15 a.m., returned at 5:45 p.m., and took her trash out every Tuesday at 7 p.m. sharp. He discovered she ordered takeout from Garden every Thursday. The irony wasn't lost on him. Complained to Hendricks about building maintenance every Friday, and spent Saturday mornings at the laundromat 6 blocks away. The laundromat detail was crucial. If Karen didn't have a washing machine, as she'd claimed to the police, then why hadn't she been going to the laundromat before this week? Marcus stationed himself across the street and watched her struggle with 2 full bags of laundry, cursing under her breath as she tried to manage the heavy door. On Saturday afternoon, while Karen was at the laundromat, Marcus made his move. He'd been thinking about this for 3 days, turning over every angle, every possible consequence. The old Marcus would have given up, found another job, maybe even moved out like Karen wanted. But the old Marcus hadn't understood how the game was played. The old Marcus still believed that truth and justice were the same thing. The new Marcus knew better. He took the fire escape to the 4th floor and jimmied Karen's window up. Skill he'd learned from his cousin Dre, back when they were kids, and locked out of their grandmother's house on a regular basis. Karen's apartment was a mirror, the image of his own, but where his was sparse and functional, hers was suffocating with middle-class pretension. Inspirational quotes in cursive fonts, live, love, love decorations, and expensive furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. And there, in her kitchen, was a brand new washing machine. Not just any washing machine, a top-of-the-line Samsung model that probably cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. It was plumbed in professionally, sitting exactly where a washing machine should sit, as if it had been there for years. Marcus photographed everything. The machine, the professional installation, the receipt he found tucked behind it showing a purchase date of 3 days ago, the morning after their confrontation. Karen had bought it with cash, probably to avoid any paper trail that could be traced later. But that wasn't the real prize. In the machine's drum, damp and wrinkled from multiple wash cycles, were the rest of his clothes. His work uniforms, his socks, his underwear, everything that had disappeared from the basement laundry room. Some items had been damaged, probably intentionally. His favorite jeans had bleach stains across the thighs. His work shirts had been washed with something that had turned them pink. Karen hadn't just stolen his clothes. She'd been systematically destroying them. Marcus photographed each damaged item, documenting the destruction with the methodical precision of someone building a legal case. Then he made a decision that the old Marcus never would have made. Took his clothes back, all of them, even the damaged ones. He stuffed them into a garbage bag he found under Karen's sink, leaving the washing machine empty and pristine. But he left something else behind, a small digital recorder, the kind journalists used for interviews, tucked behind the machine where it wouldn't be easily found. If Karen wanted to play games, Marcus was ready to play. He was back in his apartment. By 4 p.m., clothes spread across his bed like evidence in a crime scene. The damage was worse than he'd initially thought. Hundreds of dollars worth of clothing, ruined. Months of careful shopping at thrift stores and discount outlets, destroyed in Karen's vindictive washing machine. But he had proof now. Real proof. And more importantly, he had a plan. At 5:45 p.m. exactly, Marcus heard Karen's footsteps on the stairs. He waited, counting her steps, timing her movements. She'd discover the empty washing machine within minutes. She did. The scream that echoed through the building at 6:03 p.m. was pure rage, the sound of someone whose careful plans had just exploded in her face. Marcus smiled as he heard her stomping around her apartment, slamming doors, probably checking every corner for signs of the break-in. His phone rang at 6:07. Karen's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "I know it was you, Karen." "Hi." "No, what was me? You broke into my apartment. You stole from me." "That's a serious accusation. Did you call the police?" The silence stretched long enough for Marcus to know he'd hit the mark. Karen couldn't call the police without explaining why she had a washing machine she'd denied owning, without admitting she'd had his stolen clothes. "I want my property back," she said finally. "What property would that be?" "You know what property?" "Actually, I don't. Could you be more specific? Maybe describe these items you think I took." Another long silence. Karen was trapped, and they both knew it. She couldn't describe his clothes as her property without admitting to the theft. She couldn't admit to having a washing machine without exposing her lies to the police. "This isn't over," she said. "No," Marcus agreed. "I don't think it is." She hung up. Marcus spent Sunday washing his clothes properly, treating the stains, assessing what could be salvaged. Most of it was ruined, but that was okay. He had photographs documenting every item, every stain, every act of destruction. He also had something else: 3 hours of audio from the recorder he'd left in Karen's apartment. The recordings were a goldmine. Karen on the phone, with someone, probably a friend, admitting she'd taught that boy a lesson by taking his clothes. Karen practicing different versions of her story for the police, refining her victim performance. Karen calling Hendricks to complain about suspicious activity in the building, laying groundwork for future complaints. But the best recording came at 11:47 p.m. on Sunday night. Karen was on the phone with someone, her voice slurred with wine and venom. I don't care if it's illegal, Diane. These people need to learn their place. He thinks he can live wherever he wants, act however he wants, make noise whenever he wants. In my building, I've worked too hard to get where I am to let some welfare case drag down my property values. Marcus listened to the entire conversation twice, taking notes. Karen revealed her plan in detail, a systematic campaign of harassment designed to force him out. False noise complaints, staged incidents, maybe even planting evidence in his apartment if necessary. She'd done it before, she told Diane. To the Hispanic family in 2A, to the college students who'd lived in his apartment before him. The trick, Karen explained, is to make them complicit in their own destruction. Get them angry, get them to make mistakes, then use those mistakes against them. Eventually they realize they can't win, and they leave on their own. Marcus saved the recording with shaking hands. This was it. This was everything he needed to destroy Karen's credibility, to expose her as the racist predator she was. But as he sat there in his apartment, listening to Karen's voice detail his planned destruction, Marcus realized something that made his blood run cold. She was still 3 steps ahead of him. Monday morning, Marcus woke up to find police cars in front of the building again. Not just patrol cars, this time detective vehicles. Crime scene tape blocking the main entrance. His phone was ringing. Hendricks, Marcus, where are you right now? In my apartment. What's going on? Someone broke into Karen's place yesterday, stole some expensive electronics, trashed her apartment. She's saying it was you. Marcus's mouth went dry. That's impossible. I was here all day Sunday. I have witnesses, but he didn't have witnesses. He'd been alone, washing clothes, listening to recordings. The detectives want to talk to you. They're on their way up. The line went dead. Marcus looked around his apartment with new eyes, seeing what the police would see. A young black man with a documented history of harassment complaints against the victim. No alibi for the time of the break-in. Motive established through previous incidents. And then he realized the true genius of Trap. She'd staged her own burglary, probably removing her own electronics, maybe even damaging her own apartment. She'd turned his successful counterattack into evidence of escalation, his recovery of his own property into proof of criminal behavior. The knock on his door came at 9:23 a.m. 3 detectives, serious and professional, with warrant paperwork already in hand. Marcus Chen, we need to ask you some questions about a break-in that occurred yesterday in apartment 4B. Marcus let them in because he had no choice. Watched them photograph his apartment, his recovered clothes, his computer. They confiscated his phone, his camera, anything that could contain evidence. Where were you yesterday afternoon between 2 and 6 p.m.? Detective Rodriguez was younger than Marcus expected, with the kind of tired eyes that suggested she'd seen too much to be surprised by anything here. In my apartment? Can anyone verify that? No. I was alone. Any phone calls, deliveries, anything that could establish your whereabouts? Marcus thought about the recordings, the evidence that could prove Karen's guilt, but it was all on devices they'd already confiscated. And besides, how could he explain having recordings from inside Karen's apartment without admitting to the break-in? Sir, we need to inform you that Ms. Patterson has identified you as the suspect in yesterday's burglary of her apartment. She says you've been harassing her for weeks, that you've made threats, that she has documentation of your behavior. Marcus felt the walls closing in. Every move he'd made, every piece of evidence he'd gathered, every moment of satisfaction he'd felt it had all been part of Karen's larger game.